Yes, World War II produced many erroneous generals on both sides, the Axis and the Allies. They are etched in history with both golden successes and early mistakes. 39s. Look back at the fascinating lives of 5 of the most famous Nazi German generals in this journey back through history. Music. Carrick Womanstan, born in 1887, died in 1973, was a high-ranking officer in the German army during World War II. According to strategists, his fame is the reason for this song. Manstein was the best general of Nazi Germany. German officers and soldiers always praised him as an invincible general. Don and 39, take your eyes off screen, because now this military knowledge will take you back to the 1940s to meet Commander Erich von Manstein and see how the great mind of the Third Reich stirred the world. With the career and military talent of General Erich von Martin Luther King Jr. is known for being the main author of the German Army in 39's 1940 Western Front attack plan. This was a very bold and risky plan by Lieutenant General Martin Luther King Jr., but it was accepted by Hitler. According to Martin Luther King Jr. and Fa 39's plan, the German army would launch a surprise attack on northern France and the Netherlands as a diversion and lure to concentrate Allied forces there. The main German attack would then be a surprise assault using a large number of tanks and armored vehicles to penetrate the rugged, mountainous terrain at the ends of France, where the Allied forces mistakenly believed it was impossible for German tanks and armored vehicles to move. Afterward, they would penetrate deep into France, circling north to the English Channel to cut off and isolate the main British and French forces concentrated in Asia and the Flanders region. As a result of Martin Luther King Jr. Biden Fa 39's plan, German Vietnamese army achieved a swift and resounding victory on the Western Front with minimal losses, leading to his promotion. General of the Infantry and Knight of the Crucifixion, Erich von Manstein was considered a dangerous enemy of the Soviet Union, second only to pork, due to the extremely heavy or horrific losses inflicted on the Soviet army, according to a lecture by Soviet General Microlifer to Manstein. Was a cunning, resourceful, and dangerous enemy. Many of Soviet generals written after witnessing the war highly praised Manstein after his resounding victory in Europe, and he continued to be entrusted with commanding important German operations on the Eastern Front during the 1941 attack on the Soviet Union. In just 100 hours, the corps under Manstein and 39's command penetrated 315 km deep into the Soviet lines, achieving this feat despite being stretched thin and separated from other units in the Northern Army group behind him. He crushed many fierce counterattacks of the Soviet Red Army on the Special Front. The Germans, after reading the file and the strategic port city of Sevastopol, were besieged by the Germans. The fierce siege and heavy losses inflicted on the Soviet forces there, with hundreds of thousands of Soviet soldiers wounded and thousands of weapons, artillery, and tanks destroyed and captured. The city of Chivas suffered heavy losses, and a vast, strategically vital area of Soviet territory fell into German hands. This victory led Hitler to promote him to the rank of Field Marshal. In the siege of Leningrad, located in the north of the Soviet Union, the German siege of Leningrad was so severe that attempts to liberate the city were unsuccessful and heavy losses were inflicted. Leningrad was finally liberated in January 1944, but at this time Germany no longer held command. It is also worth mentioning the operation to relieve the German 6th Army, led by Field Marshal RSTV, which was trapped and suffering heavy losses in Stalingrad. The commander quickly broke through the Soviet lines, causing the Red Army to suffer heavy losses. At one point, the relief force of the master was only 30 km from the German army in Stalingrad. The Germans in Stalingrad could see the flares from the relief force coming to their aid. At this time, the commander suggested to Hitler and flashed that the Sixth Army, which was being besieged, should open a bloody path from within to coordinate with the relief force. However, Hitler flatly refused and ordered the Sixth Army to stay within the city. This insane order of Hitler made the relief effort difficult. The Soviet army organized a strong and sustained attack on the Master and 39's flank, forcing the Master to retreat to a defensive position and preventing further advance towards Stalingrad. Later, many analysts argued that if the Sixth Army of the Soviet Union had attacked from within as suggested by Flast, the country would have avoided the disastrous defeat of the Germans at Stalingrad, crucial turning point for all sides in World War II. Battle of St. Petersburg in February and 3 saw classic counterattack that not only saved the entire German front from collapse but also allowed the Soviet Union to regain a vast territory. Conversely, the Soviet Air Force suffered minimal losses with approximately 46,000 killed and 14,000 captured. The capture also resulted in the seizure of 600 tanks and 200 artillery pieces, shifting hopes for the Germans. Hitler even awarded the Germans a knighthood for this resounding victory, and upon assuming command of the Southern Army, he led the troops into battle against the Soviet Union in July and August. This victory was one of the few German achievements to achieve such success. The positive outcome was evident in Marshal Zhukov and 39's memoirs, where he frequently mentioned this army unit with admiration. For its personal perspective, he considered the raid a German victory, noting that the campaign ended on July 13th when Hitler ordered a halt to the attack in the Me area. Some objected, arguing that he still had many reserve troops that had not been reinforced, while the Soviet reserve forces had naturally agreed to the General Directorate and Faith 39's decision. Although the Red Army suffered heavy losses, military encounters still refuted Germany and Faith 39's ability to achieve victory. If the campaign had lasted beyond July 13th, in the Battle of the Divers River in 1943, Hitler would have built a system of defensive lines along the river, preventing Hitler from imposing an intense pink and forcing him to hold the entire area in this battle. Within just 2 months, July and August, the German Air Force suffered over 1.6 million casualties with 1,000 tanks and self-propelled artillery pieces, along with 4,200 wounded. The German organization of the Mastel was only the less severe but extremely damaging aspect was that Germany in 39's war effort was hampered by a lack of manpower and resources. To compensate, Germany had to resort to a campaign of using live troops. On November 4, 1944, Hitler, a man named Heinem, argued that the defensive line could not hold long or that Germany needed to withdraw to preserve its forces. He also once again suggested that Hitler changed the structure of the Supreme Command, expanding the operational authority of the generals. Both proposals were rejected because Hitler always believed he was capable enough to control the overall strategy. In early March 1944, Soviet army pushed the German army back to the river. From that moment on, he requested that all troops be prepared to encircle Germany. 1st Panzer Group, on March 25, 1944, rushed to Hitler and 39's headquarters to persuade him to change his approach. Finally, Hitler agreed to let him go, but then March 30, 1944, his health was not good after years of continuous fighting, and partly due to his inaction with the forces, Hitler forced him to retire and hand over his Southern Army Group to Marshal Winter. Model. After leaving the army, he went to live at his home in Illinois. He was captured by the British and ended up young, under strong pressure from the Soviet Union. In 1948, the post-war court sentenced him to 18 years in prison. Although Messi was called a true soldier, only doing his duty, he bravely fought against an enemy with overwhelming numbers. However, he was released on May 7, 1953, received an invitation to be an advisor to the Ministry of Defense of the Federal Republic of Germany. In 1955-1956, his memoir about the war in Quat, Lost Victory Quat, was first published. In 1955, the general argued that if German generals had been in charge of the strategic front instead of being so incompetent, the war in the Soviet Union could have been won. According to military knowledge, the most memorable quote from this general was that the selection of personnel could only be categorized into 4 types of officers. Firstly, Those who are both lazy and somewhat incompetent, the best thing to do is to leave them alone, they done Faith 39T. Cause any harm. Secondly, those who are both diligent and intelligent, these are excellent auxiliary officers who ensure that all information and issues are recorded and communicated accurately. Thirdly, those who are diligent but ignorant, these are a great threat or need to be eliminated immediately. Finally, there are the intelligent but lazy ones. They will be the most high-ranking generals. The last sentence is a separate thought and not part of the main text. A solemn ceremony conducted according to military protocol, and hundreds of soldiers attended the farewell feast for him at his final resting place. His deputy is professionally reported by Bio An in the Time on June 13, stated in quote, his influence and impact on the mission of consciousness and the depth of knowledge stemmed more from his ability to create a surge of energy in the army or impress with his personality. Even the German newspaper Der Spiegel praised Master as one of the last great strategic strategists in military history, criticizing his unwavering loyalty that contributed to 39's downfall. Thus, whether a leader is good or bad is not always judged by historical records or by public opinion. A good leader is one who has loyal followers around him ready to die for him and who receives the adoration and respect of his followers under the established standards of a good leader. Besides the invincible General Balmain, there are actually generals whose sons stand even higher than the standards I just mentioned. Pine Quat, the man in the newspaper, is Field Marshal Erwin Bromo, the famous desert fox of the Third Reich. He not only commanded the adoration of his subordinates, becoming an invincible symbol of the German nation during the war years, but he also earned the respect of his enemies. Natural talent. From the outbreak of World War I in 1914, Romeo participated in legitimate battles in Romania and Italy. His enthusiasm was so great that his comrades often said in quote, where Romeo is, there is a front. Quote, Romeo was wounded 3 times and awarded the IV and CCP, both first and second class. He became the youngest soldier to receive this prestigious medal in German history. Despite his young age, Romeo demonstrated exceptional talent in battles in the mountains of northern Italy. Along with over 100 soldiers, Romeo successfully defended the Master's mountain range, repelling an Italian army of 1,000 men. After this incredible feat, he was awarded Germany and 39's highest honor, the Order of Military Merit. This chapter was originally reserved for German generals, but it was specially awarded to him at the end of World War I. Rumors circulated that many groups were part of the Super Infantry, an organization that replaced the German Army General Staff, but he refused, only accepting a position as a frontline officer in the Gmail. Was given command of a British battalion in 1937. GL published his book in quote, Infantry Attacks in quote, which was highly acclaimed and soon became military textbook. It was also from this book that office paid more attention to Romers and gave him a position in the German War Department, but at the same time, he continued to teach at the Porsche War Academy. Gmail received many awards for his outstanding achievements during in 1938 after Germany annexed Austria. Gmail was promoted to colonel and transferred to command the Wiener Neustadt Officer School. At the end of 1938, he was again promoted to Major General, commanding the National Guard Battalion. In 1939, Germany attacked. It was said that the color brown for World War II was also the time when Romeo and 39's talent blossomed, causing Allied generals fighting against Nazism to bow in respect as he advanced rapidly. After achieving successes in an early 19th, Hitler allowed him to command a tank division even though he had no practical battlefield experience commanding tanks. Despite opposition, Hitler finally agreed to let Romeo command on May 10, the German 15th Corps. Under the command of General Romeo advanced very quickly, leaving behind other German divisions. Even the German General Staff on this front received no radio contact From Romeo and Faith 39's division, they assumed Romeo had been annihilated and stopped supplying fuel to this unit. Later, Romeo accused the officers and soldiers of negligence, and the US and Germany claimed that Romeo and Faith 39's advance was too fast. This caused the commander to be unable to keep up with the German defeat. Rapidly advancing into France on May 20th, Romeo and 39's division moved Wall Street, where Allied forces, British and French, were present to prevent the German advance to the Strait of Hormuz and to encircle and destroy the main Allied forces in the north. However, the Allied forces were quickly overwhelmed. Romeo was awarded a medal, becoming the first division commander to receive an award in this campaign. At the same time, he was assigned an additional armored division. On May 28th, Romeo ordered his troops to advance into Liaotung, a provincial capital. Romeo ordered the troops to advance very quickly. The 7th Armored Division required a fierce artillery barrage. Romantic and Faith 39's troops surrounded the French Lady Corps, preventing them from retreating to the... On June 6th, Romeo continued to attack and occupy areas around the Seine River. In 2 days, he advanced 100. On June 10th, Romeo reached near the coast, a commune in the administrative region of CD Maritime District. Realized his troops had advanced too quickly and were far from the main force. Learning from past mistakes, Gomez sent a message to the command headquarters and Quat I am on the coast. On June 24th, Baden Quat Harry and 39 status and Quat Francis suffered a complete defeat. Pun Quat Gmail was sent to Paris at this time. The 7th Division, which had become famous everywhere for its extremely rapid advance, surprising the enemy, was therefore also known as the N Quat Division. Pin Quat Gmail received much praise as well as much sarcasm, with many saying that such a rapid advance was, however, Romeo and Faith 39's achievements when Hitler and the highest commanders of the German Navy were conducting their campaigns for 2 years in 1941 led to Romeo being promoted to commander of the German 5th Lightning Division, which later became the 21st Armored Division. This division, along with the 15th Armored Division, formed the African Corps. With its surprise attack style was evident. Yes, at this time on the North African front, the Italian army was struggling to cope with the British army because of its important position. The fascists wanted to occupy this area to control the Mediterranean Sea and the Suez Canal, then advance to seize oil resources in the region. The Middle East and 39's administration suffered a series of defeats, so Gmail was deployed there. Initially, the Axis command planned a feint defense, followed by small attacks in May targeting Arabia and Bengal and planning to hold the defensive line between the ancient cities. Gmail disagreed with the plan, arguing that such small attacks were useless and that Vinaga would be captured by the Germans. He implemented his initial plan, initially deploying troops to maintain a defensive position while the British, believing the Germans were consolidating their positions after successive defeats, unexpectedly launched a surprise attack. Romeo sent the Swift Anquat to capture Olympia on March 24th and Masha Virgo on March 31st. Continuous attacks pushed the British back to the Somme border, recapturing all of Olympia. Side story about 3